to the Be My Guest podcast, where we interview inspiring entrepreneurs who share their stories and their insights and much, much more. You made a great choice tuning in today to the Be My Guest podcast. Welcome and enjoy the show. Welcome, guys, to another great episode of Be My Guest podcast. We got another great episode with another great guest today. And I wanted to share with you guys as a reminder, if you have an inspiring story as an entrepreneur, business owner, or a professional, please go to our website, BeMyGuestPodcast.com, BeMyGuestPodcast.com. Click on Get Interviewed. We'd love to talk to you about the possibility of having you on as a guest as well. Without further ado, I want to bring on our guest today. We got Coach Blanco. He is here. And thank you, man, for showing up and being a part of this episode today.
Absolutely.
So if you could take a moment, tell everybody who you are, how you got, who you are, what you do, and how you got started.
All right. So Anthony Blanco, born and raised in Topeka, Kansas, still in Topeka, Kansas. Been married for 25 years, have been dating my wife for 30 years and 3 kiddos. One is going to be 21. And then I got twin girls that are going to be 18 here really soon. And a fat pit bull named Miles. So that's a little bit about myself. As far as professionally, I've been business coaching and providing any kind of those services for a little over 20 years. Here recently, actually just started a podcast as well from friends encouraging me to start one and have interesting conversations with interesting people. My podcast has nothing to right now. It's not geared towards anything, but my interactions that I have with people that have an interesting story. So sometimes they're entrepreneurs and sometimes they're just people that have neat stories.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. Yeah. But business coaching full time. My wife and I own a business and we've been doing that for 13 years. And that is different than my business coaching.
Gotcha.
And that is in the health industry. So as health and nutrition coaching, we have a couple smoothie stores, stuff like that. So not only coach businesses, but also own one.
Awesome. Well, how did you get started into the business coaching world?
Well, I was actually selling medium commercial tires. So I was dressed up like what we call Tire Man Tony. I was selling to farmers. And so I was in Wranglers and boots and a camo hat to look the part to be out selling in the country. I had transferred or come over from a banking job in slacks and stuff like that. So that didn't work very well out in the country. My wife called me one day and said, there's this company that wants me to recruit financial advisors and then teach them marketing. I want nothing to do with any of that. But I told them that I would recommend you and, be my husband to come here. So that's how I got my feet wet. And it was very, very, you had to build your own book back then, but build a client. So I would make 300 phone calls a day looking for financial advisors that were open to a little bit of marketing, consulting, or coaching. And that's where I got started.
Awesome. And so now, how long have you been doing the coaching?
I would say it's like around 23 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So who would you say your primary or ideal client that you work with the most?
The primary client that I work with right now are actually dentists. So those are the primary candidates, mainly because I had a friend that fell into a group of them that couldn't handle all of the influx of people that wanted to get coaching. And so I stepped in and got into that industry about 8 years ago. So that is the high majority, although I do some executive coaching that has nothing to do with dentistry. And I've coached industrial construction. I've coached fireplace companies. I've coached other types of companies. So if there are people, all businesses are relatively the same. If there are people in them, then people need to be coached. And so I think I heard Dan Martell say this, it's you build the people and the people will build the business.
Right. And people are your main product always.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at businesses that are in need of coaching or going from one point to the next, growing from where they're at to the next level, what are some of the primary things that you find most businesses need as far as being able to use a coach to help them get there?
the first thing that I typically see in a need, and I do this with every single client I work with, is I take them through what's called an alignment. So I want to make sure that I align their life goals with their business goals,
Mhm.
because and I have this phrase that I say is business is to help us get what we most desire in life. It's not life. And so what I do is I work with people that are life-minded individuals or need to recapture that life-minded thought process, and teach entrepreneurs or professionals to teach them how to use business or their entrepreneurship in order to design the life that they want. That usually happens through creating clarity. What I find is that most business owners don't have clarity of what they're trying to make and don't know how to get there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think entrepreneurs are born with that, or anyone can be an entrepreneur?
Anybody can be an entrepreneur. Absolutely. I mean, you have people that are typically, what you see is what's advertised on TV, and they'll show you some of the people that are maybe a little bit, I don't know, I would say out of control,
Mhm.
or they're all over the place. They're all over the place. But in reality, I've seen everybody from very analytical people that are entrepreneurs to people that are all over the place entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter. But entrepreneurship is more of a mindset that I want to create a product or service that allows other people to buy, so I can create an income or sell a company. Depends on
Yeah.
what their goal is.
When you when you're talking to these owners and entrepreneurs, what's some of the things that you find as far as them being personally not able to go to where they want to go, but they have obviously the desire, or you wouldn't even be in the conversation,
Sure.
that kind of blocks them on a personal level? Is it
Sure.
mindset? Is it environment? Is it relationships? What is it?
I would say number one, it's mindset. So, like, I have this what's called like a three. I call it, my friend called it the 3UC method. He named it and then put it on my website. I was like, okay, which is unlock, unleash to become undeniable. And so the majority of the time that I spend with new clients is unlocking people. And that's where the unlocking has to do with clarity. And that is their why, their passion, their purpose. I'll have them take a strengths finder test. If they're Christian, I have them take the adult spiritual gifts test. I then have them get why they're here on earth. What are they trying to do? What's their greatest purpose? Sometimes the business isn't the greatest purpose. Sometimes I'm talking with a guy right now. The business is not his greatest purpose. He wants to go evangelize to people. So the business is to help him get to do that. It's not
Right.
actually part of the business. It can be, it's just not the main thing. So it's really dive into that clarity, but they have to have clarity in a couple different things. One is they have to know who they are, not who they think the world wants them to be. And two is they have to be clear on their freedom, their finances, and their fulfillment. So they have to understand, what does freedom mean to me?
Mhm.
What are my finances that I need, and what absolutely fulfills me? And what I find is that most people, well, I'll state it like this: is probably like 14 years ago, I left a position at a job, and the guy that asked me, he goes, "What are you, allergic to money?" Because it was a pretty good paying job. And I said, "I'm not allergic to money. I just got other things to do." And he said, it's really cool to have that knows to know somebody that has found their purpose. And finding implies searching. And what I
Mhm.
would tell you is that as business owners or people in general have never taken the time to actually sit down and start to plan their future. They spend more time planning what they're going to watch on TV or their football games or their grocery store list or vacation, but they actually don't plan to design their life about what fulfills them, what creates the freedom, and where their finances are going. So I have to get those things nailed down when I'm doing an alignment with people. And that's usually where they start to really discover, when we talk about like mindset, like a different way to think about how to think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the coaching industry and business. Where do you think it stands? I mean, obviously, everybody, once they do a little bit of something, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes not even nothing, they think they
Sure.
can be a coach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's your take on the coaching industry, especially in America?
I've seen people go on. I'll say this: I love people, and I see that some people want to help people, and just like a lot of other things, whether it's a personal trainer, no knock on personal trainers, but some people will go out and get a certification, and then they think they're a life coach or they're a business coach. So maybe they completed a course, or maybe when I say a course, sometimes it's weekend courses, like it's like 2 days of Zooms. And now you're a business coach or you're a life coach or you're a fitness coach or a nutrition coach. And so I think that people maybe have the right intention, but they have a misguided approach. But I would say that that's more because they just don't know what they don't know.
Mm.
Um, I would tell you that probably the best program that I've gotten to take part of is I'm a John Maxwell certified coach. I've been teaching John Maxwell for over 20 years, but I've never become certified. And then it came up with one of my friends. He's like, dude, I'd really do that. Put it on your website. People will notice and it'll help with SEO. And I'm like, all right. And what I noticed was at that conference, at the John Maxwell conference, that they have systems and processes that I trust from going to that event. I messaged two of my friends and I said, you were talking and asking about coaching. If you want to get into coaching and you're looking for a group of people that will walk along beside you and have systems and assets and processes and documents and calls and stuff like that, I would highly recommend that you join the John Maxwell coaching program. And there might be other programs out there that do that. I just would say the labeling of something that I want to do versus putting in the time and education and the books. I've ran into people that say they're life coaches or business coaches or whatever kinds of coaches. And I ask them, what are your top 5 favorite books? And they are like, well, I don't read. I'm like, okay, so what's your favorite podcast? And they're like, I don't really have one. So I don't know. I wouldn't want that particular person working with me if I'm looking for somebody to guide me in a certain direction.
Yeah. Do you think, especially a business coach, being someone that's, led a company or started a company, versus someone who hasn't, can they still be a coach? Leading.
Ask me that again. Ask again.
If you have, for example, you got coaches in the NFL who've never actually played in the NFL, but yet sometimes they end up being great coaches.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing when it comes to business coaches? You have
Yes.
to be able to lead a business to a certain level to be a coach?
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. You have to have insane curiosity and without making assumptions.
Yeah.
The more curious you are, and your number one desire is to service the need and the value of the client by asking questions without assumptions, anybody can be a coach. It's what the problem is that most people come in with the answers as opposed to having the questions. And that's not the way that you solve life problem or business problems.
And I wonder, I'm going to kind of teeter back and forth from actually your coaching approach and also the coaching business, but let's step back over to the coaching process. How much of, coaching these entrepreneurs that it falls, and I think I already asked this question, but I'm kind of doing it in a different way. But let's say how much of it falls in like a personal column of them, like I got a couple of people that we have on this podcast sometimes, and we ask them, what's the difference between a coach and a consultant? Maybe you can give us your take on that.
A coach, a consultant tells you what to do. A coach helps you discover that you already know the answer.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not a consultant. I tell people that all the time. That do not. And there's a place for consultants, but some of my best friends in this industry are consultants, but they go in and they'll work on sales and follow the system, do this thing, say these things in the right way. That's a sales consultant. When I'm working with people in the business and looking to build the people, I'm not a consultant because people are not systems and processes. People are like complex Rubik's cubes that continuously are changing in our hands.
Right.
And so that's where the being present and asking the right questions leads us to build the people. And like I said earlier, if we build the people will build the business.
So true. So true. Now let's go back over to the coaching business. What, when you first decided, hey, I'm going to do this coaching full time, I think you said that, your wife had maybe got a hold of this opportunity and she thought it was better fit for you than her. What was it that you saw about staying in that lane and building your coaching business that you're like, hey, I can be successful with that? Was it the fact that, you were curious, like you said, or what was it that really gave you that confidence?
Well, I would say that I first started off as a consultant. So it was, call all these people, which that builds confidence after you're out of your comfort zone, making 300 phone calls and saying the wrong things a lot of times until you can say the right things to try to get somebody to get into a longer conversation. But then the calling people with sales ideas. Hey, listen, I've got this idea, or I've got these questions to ask on your next opportunity with a potential client. Let me run these by you. Do me a favor, call me afterwards and let me know how the appointment went. And then they call you like, oh man, I closed this case. It was amazing. I used the questions that you asked me. And so it was really geared towards like marketing and sales consulting at the very beginning. But then as I just was curious and reading all these books and just had bigger thoughts, the organization that I was with, and I would start. So one of the guys that was one of my supervisors would hear me asking questions like, okay, so what are you doing here? How are you? Okay. How are you tracking this? Okay. Describe this to me. Who's doing that? And so I was asking business related questions. And I didn't know I was just curious.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me, hey, Blanco. And I'm like, what? And he goes, quit asking all those questions. Like, just do the sales thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm much more, I had outgrown my position at that
Yeah.
organization to where I felt like it was a disservice to the people that I was trying to provide value to if I could not help them in a bigger way. So,
Right. Right.
mhm.
And what was some of the first challenges that you faced as far as, like even getting new clients, and what did you find really worked for you when you were starting off?
What really worked for me, number one, is I sat down. So I do my planning every single year, and then I do quarterly planning. And then what I do is I write not just like a goal, but I write how I'm going to get the goal. So like whether it's Atomic Habits book or whether it's another book called Burn Your Goals, it's like, what is your goal? But then forget about your goal after you plan it, and then go after whatever the steps are to be able to do that. And
Right.
then I just call it the law of large numbers. So like, let's say that I wanted to bring on, I don't know, let's say I want to bring on 10 new clients in the next 2 months, because with the fee that I charge, I'm not trying to go out and work with a ton of people. I don't need to, but I want to work with the right people that are open to coaching. So I always have to ask myself is, where do these people go? Where do they hang out? What do they listen to? And then what is their highest need? And a lot of times what I found was, if I go get in front of a group of people, which the old school platform might've been on stage somewhere
Right.
where I was doing speaking and training, then I would, uncover needs from the platform, and then people would reach out, and that's how I would bring on more clients. Now,
Mm.
with Advent's podcast and stuff like that, and social media, which I've been trying to learn and get better at over the last 6 months. And I'll say this: social media is hard. More or less, stories are hard because you have to
Yeah.
remember to do stories. But yeah, so like right now, that's platform, and so I always call it like, find a platform and take your platform, turn it into profit, but you have to understand how big of a platform you need. So instead of just one-to-one clients, which is okay, I started going either one to many or one to many. So it was me to a strategic referral source to their group, or it was me to a group of people hired in as a speaker.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. That's good stuff. How about this? What is your opinion on what makes a good coach versus a bad one?
A good coach will be present, ask questions, and not have answers. The problem is that with people, when they head into a coaching relationship, they want to have all the answers, and that is a feeling of more of insecurity. But I feel like I have to have the answers, which that isn't the way to truly coach people to their potential. You can consult them to a certain spot, and that's great. But really digging in and being present, asking questions, not for what you think they're going to say, but what they actually mean. Also a ridiculous learner.
Hmm.
So yesterday, without knowing it, I think I consumed 5 hours of YouTube, not watching. So it's not me just watching YouTube, but I have
Right.
YouTube Premium. And so I just stream seminars and stream podcasts and stream other things. And so for the time I woke up to the end of the day, there was 5 hours of content on how to live a courageous life in uncertainty. And there was
Mm.
4 parts to it. And so that's what I consume. So now all that stuff is like in my head. And a coach needs to understand what their gifts are. So like my number one gift is learning, according to Gallup Strengths Finder. And so when I lean into that gift, for me as a business coach, somebody else's might be analytics, which I'm good at analytics, but my number one thing is learning a ridiculous amount of information in order to serve people the way that I can serve them, where
Yeah,
it's designed. Mhm.
that's good. So, what about someone that's in that kind of in the market for looking for a coach? Is there some indicators or red flags of people they should not maybe invest in versus who they should?
Yeah, somebody that guarantees that they're going to get them results.
Nice. I like it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
So someone like yourself, do you have a coach, or how do you approach different things you're looking at
sure.
trying to achieve?
I don't have a business coach per se. I have mentors that I go to and ask questions. And
Right.
so one mentor I'll meet with once a quarter via Zoom, ask him, here's where we're at. Here's our numbers. What questions do you have for me? And then he'll ask a bunch of questions and uncover usually a need of something that we need to focus on. I hired a podcast coach while, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago. She's also transferring into a personal development, or not personal, a personal branding coach, which is great. So I'm working with her on those things. So I have different coaches for different things.
Nice.
I usually will hire like a fitness program coach, so I hire coaches in every aspect of my life and what I want to do in order to get better. Some of those coaches are virtual, by meaning is I listen to a ridiculous amount of stuff that I learn from.
Right. Gotcha.
And not just learn, but apply.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple of scenarios here. Maybe you can give some examples of how you'd coach someone out of these different scenarios. Let's say someone's coming off of some major failure when it comes to business.
Mm-hmm.
And they know they have the chops, they know they have the abilities, right? So that's not a question. But obviously coming off failure, it depends on obviously the amount of failure, but they're probably going to have some confident issues. What would you say to them? How would you coach them?
First thing I would ask them is why they got in, and this depends on if they're going back into the same thing that they had failure in. So without the context of failure, I'm going to be general, but I would tend to go back to tell me more about what failure it is. And then they would describe that to me. Then I would say, okay, so tell me why you got into doing what you were doing. I'd find that out. Usually I'd go like 7 layers deep in the whys to find out why what really powers them to go. And so what I find is that most people feel like they're a failure because if they feel like they're on the verge of giving up on their dream. So in reality, I just go back into their passion spot, dig that back up. And then after they've realized that their heart is still in it, then talk about the next steps to build back.
Yeah.
And also that failure is the most successful people in life fail all the time. It's not
Right.
Failure's failure. Like if you don't fail, then you're not doing anything. Like
Yeah.
I think I heard a quote from Les Brown. He said, the only people that don't have problems are in the graveyard. So my objective is to go create as many problems as I possibly can because we're highly paid problem solvers.
Right. Right. All right. Let's take another scenario. Let's say someone's got a lot of talent. They've done business in many different ways, but they're really they're kind of stuck on what they should do going forward, because, in this environment that we're in nowadays, you mentioned YouTube and things like that. There's a ton of different businesses you can start, whether you have money or not money, and whether you want to do this remote or when you want to do it in person. So opportunities are not thin, in my opinion, at least.
Yep.
But what if you're kind of in that range of like, which one, right? How do you help someone with that?
What I would do is I'd go back to, and again, this has to do with alignment, is I would go back to number one, who are you? So what are your gifts? So for me, like my spiritual gifts are, it's faith, it's building into people, it's wisdom, knowledge, and teaching. So then I cross-reference that with the Gallup Strengths Finder, which is learning, futuristic, maximizer, strategic, and responsibility. And so what I would do now, and I've done this exercise with a couple of people here lately, which has been fun, is I've taken those results and the definitions of the things, I've put them in a chat GPT. And then I said, how do we use these strengths, cross-reference them for different things that may be available out in the marketplace that would utilize these skills in the highest capacity. So that way people don't look at a business to start or do, they're looking with something that fits. I don't want people to fit into a business. I want the business to fit into them.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's good stuff here. Well, what is it like working with you? I mean, do you have a certain process? I know you talked about a few of the different elements, but what is it like working with you? Is it a certain number of weeks, a program, a timeline? How does it work?
Sure. Usually I work week to week with people as far as like a rhythm, but very first thing that I do, and depending on the engagement, like for example, I just entered an engagement that's more on the sales side, but it's only going to be 90 days. My average full engagement when I engage with people for business coaching is around 3.5 years because we've got goals that we're trying to do, or we're trying to expand, or we're purchasing more businesses as a part of portfolio. So there's all kinds of things we're working on.
Right. Right.
But there's a short engagement, which is like 90 days. If it's I would call that more consultant specific. And then there's going to be like a 6 months to a year long engagements that may be solving a particular problem. Let's say they just need something for culture. Like, hey, I need you to really help with culture. We're a disaster right now. And I'll say, okay, I'll get in there. Let's do some work over the next 6 months to a year, but it has to be longer because sometimes it has to do with letting people go after we've defined our culture, and then hiring to that culture for the people that won't change. But again, for the more robust clients that I work with, that I work best with, is the people that have a bigger vision for what they're trying to create. And that's been a lot of fun where I can work with a business that starts with like a single or double location, and then they grow to 4 or 6 locations. And then we can take it to market, and that business can sell for 18 million or 20 million or $30 million. That's fun.
Yeah. So kind of put a little bow on it. What would you think, or what would you say is one of your main, problems you're helping solve for the clients you're working with?
I would tell you that the people that tell me what I'm best at is I am an expert in communication. That's
Yeah.
communication, and see, that has to do with the it's a communication expert that has to do with asking the questions to get the owners to say and state and understand what they truly want in life. It's an expert communicator in working with their business growth engineer, which is maybe their manager, in order to align with the owners in order to execute at the highest level. And then it's communication with the team in order to execute the vision of the practice manager and the owners, and then getting everybody to be on the same page to move forward
Right.
together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, is there anything else that you wanted the audience to know, or maybe how to get a hold of you? I do have your website. I'm going to put it on the bottom
Sure.
here, the banner. Let people know how they can get a hold of you and what they got to go
Yeah, sure.
to do the process.
Yeah, just go onto the website, fill out the form. That'd be best. If you want to scribble down my phone number and text me, it's going to be 785-554-8626. It's in the way to do it. I do get a lot of inquiries on my website that I'll chat with and see if it's a good fit. But yeah, I mean, that's primarily it. The best way to get a hold of me. If you want to say there's one thing that people should know if they're looking at an engagement with me, is I tell people this, and I don't mean to sound like a jerk or anything, but I'm not looking for friends. I'm more concerned with people's future than I am being their friends. But I will tell you that almost every single business that I work with is I become friends with the owners because we become aligned in their vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I do follow the philosophy of being kind, not nice. Nice is I'm not going to share things with you that you need to hear, whether you're in your own way. Kind means that I will pleasantly and sometimes unpleasantly ask you very difficult questions and make people feel very uncomfortable. But that's the type of engagement that I'll enter in with.
Yeah, and that's so needed because you need to be told sometimes what you need versus what you want to hear. So it's always important. Well, Coach Blanco, thank you so much for taking the time. If you just stick around for a minute here, and we'll wrap it up. But appreciate you guys watching another episode of Be My Guest Podcast. You've been watching Be My Guest Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, go to BeMyGuestPodcast.com. That's BeMyGuestPodcast.com.